So there will be no dog continuity in this video either.
No. Sunny's thrilled. I piled all of our extra blankets on the floor just to get them out of the shot. And he's like, oh, wow, a pillow fort. So he's just stacked up on them like Princess of the Peak.
When you need some dough, you don't know where to go in this patriarchal capitalist hellscape. Well, here's the sitch. We're gonna help you, sis, because bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. And so can you.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, and we are here. And the 2024 presidential election, it has happened. And the outcome was not great. It was not great.
Not great.
Yeah. So you and I, we have taken some time to be angry and to be scared and to grieve. And we checked in our community and we practiced some highly necessary self-care. And we spent several cathartic hours scrolling through our Leopards Ate My Face, which I will reference later in this video as well. So we hope that you all did that too. But now we are ready for the next step. And that is because we have chosen to stay and fight. And part of that means embracing our calling as your beloved yet humble internet aunties, your bitches, your opinionated ladies of the web.
Of the night. The night web.
The night web.
Night web with Kitty and Piggy.
That's right. So we're going to share some of our ideas on how we can prepare for the coming storm, because it may not even be much of a storm. We could be looking at anything from a little light rain to a Category 5 hurricane, but it is our belief that no matter what happens, you should prepare for the worst in such a way that even in the best case scenario, you're still going to end up better for it. So this video is going to be a guide that includes some instructions specific to a second Trump administration. Yeah, I gag even saying that. But some of it is just going to be good practice no matter what we have in store.
Yeah, so today we're talking about Project 2025 and basically what the Trump administration has stated their goals are and what we know. Very helpfully, they just wrote all this stuff down just with no shame whatsoever. They just wrote down all the horrific things that they plan to do. So we're going to talk through it. There are a lot of cooks in this oppressive kitchen. So for the purposes of today, we're talking about Project 2025 as encompassing the general goals and policy agendas for this second Trump administration, and also just life under total Republican Party control. Let's go. So the good thing is change is not going to come overnight. We're not just going to wake up in the darkest timeline. Knock on wood. There is no guarantee that any of the goals that they are putting forth in Project 2025 are actually going to come to pass. With any luck, this administration, it's full of toadies and conspiracy theorists and entitled con men. And hopefully they will all just get in their own way and infight with each other and make zero progress toward their goals. And it will all just be sort of a conservative wet dream fan fiction that they wrote for America once, but weren't able to actually do anything about. But we can't bank on that. So that's why we're going to recommend some steps that we think are just generally good for you to take, regardless of how successful they are. And hopefully it's not very successful.
All right. So knowledge is power. Your first step in preparing for Project 2025 is to get educated. Learn what plans they're ready to set in motion before they set them in motion. Forewarned is forearmed, after all. I'm so funny. So I recommend you familiarize yourself with Project 2025, and you can actually read it online in its entirety for free. Pro tip, if you scroll down and click on the links to the individual chapters, you will be able to read them without entering your contact information above the Read This Mandate for Free button. You are welcome. But why would you want to do that when other smart, courageous, beautiful people with flawless skin and hair have already read it for you? Besides yours truly, I am, of course, referring to the ACLU analysis from the 19th, the BBC's coverage, and stories from the Associated Press. So, step 2, you're going to want to curate a reliable, transparent newsfeed. So about those sources that I just referred to, one is an American nonprofit civil rights organization. One is an independent nonprofit newsroom reporting on gender, politics, and policy. One is a respected foreign news outlet. And one is the most trusted not-for-profit news agency in the whole entire world. Are they all completely unbiased, factual, and politically centrist? No. No such animal exists, which is something that I learned way back in journalism school. In this era of rampant misinformation and propaganda, it's really, really important you understand where your news is coming from, the bias of its creators and distributors, and the agenda that it's pushing. So following the AP, that's the Associated Press, and Reuters is a good first step. We will also link you in the description to the interactive media bias chart. And all of this information can be found on our website as well. This year, I have been especially grateful for a paid service called Ground News. And spoiler alert, we don't have an affiliate link for them because when I asked them if we could be affiliate media partners, they literally recoiled at the idea of partnering with us because we are utterly lacking in respectability, apparently. But I love them anyway, so I'm still referring them. It's basically a news aggregator that displays the biases of various news sources, shows you how each side is covering a given story, and illuminates your own biases based on your news consumption. It's really, really useful in battling misinformation, and I highly recommend it.
Now, Jess, you are the one who really drove this article today, and I just want to call you out for a moment because the first thing that you told people to do is to read Project 2025. Depressing, upsetting.
Right.
How dare you tell our poor readers, hey, read this white nationalist bullshit. And then the second thing you've told them to do is consider their own biases. That's not fun. I would like all of my biases confirmed all of the time, please. It's the only comfort that I have.
You're right. Let us never challenge our personal viewpoints.
Please.
That would be scary.
I am mad at Ground News for refusing. We never do affiliates. We never do affiliates. 3 affiliates because we're so picky.
I was like, would you like to partner with us in our quest to illuminate the children? And they were like, fuck no, get out of here. They're like, who are you? I'm sorry.
And yet, we're still repping them. Guys, we have so much integrity. We're overflowing with integrity.
Overflowing. That said, if somebody who is a competitor to Ground News would like to sponsor us, I mean, I'm not going to kick you out of bed.
All right. So next thing that we want to do is influence others for the better. Everyone has an opinion as to why this last election turned out the way that it did. And that is absolutely not something that we're going to get into today. But I will say, I do think that in general, misinformation has a big role to play in this outcome. I think there's a lot of voters who abstain from voting. And there are others who base their votes on misinformation, on lies, and also just like on vibes. And it would be super neat if these voters could actually be convinced to see the truth and understand the personal and individual importance of their own vote. And I completely understand. I completely understand from the bottom of my heart why people are feeling really fed up and don't want to participate in this system. I really do. But I do think that we have the power to educate and influence the people around us. If you know someone who is kind of walking down this path of falling into conspiracy theories and misinformation, take the time to correct them. If you followed the first 2 steps, you'll be really well informed. And people do respect that for the most part. But that said, like, I do think it's best to reserve your energy with people that you can reasonably expect to influence. We are not going to get out of this situation by arguing with strangers online, arguing in bad faith. That's just a waste of your time and energy. Don't do that. Instead, use your personal relationships with people. Talk to people who you already know well and respect, and that is much more likely to actually get you somewhere helpful.
Next, we're going to talk about the money stuff. So, political strategist and swamp-dwelling Firefly cousin James Carville once famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." Sorry, I don't have a good Cajun accent. I can't do that. Anyway, in 2024, the election definitely boiled down to money in the economy, specifically how immigrants used Hunter Biden's laptop to make eggs very expensive.
Bastards.
How dare they? So money in the economy, they were central to voters' concerns, and I can't really blame them. The normal necessities of life, like food and housing and education and transportation, they're increasingly unaffordable. People are pissed, and that's super easy to understand, even if we don't agree on the causes or the solutions. Unfortunately, Project 2025 proposes some extreme and demonstrably counterproductive ideas about how to cut government spending. By cutting the social safety net, and reducing costs by reducing the functionality of our supply chains and lowering taxes, for the ruling class.
Is that me?
No, honey, no.
All right. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to beef up your emergency fund. Longtime readers will remember a time when we talked about the difference between real emergencies and fake emergencies. I believe the fake emergency was oriented around the need for bacon at breakfast.
Very important.
And that was a fake emergency. That was just hunger. But these are actual emergencies that we're talking about. There could be some pretty big Project 2025 emergency spending opportunities, which we will be talking about in greater depth. It's not my intention to scare you, but I'm also not catastrophizing. We are looking at a very volatile situation where we could be looking at job losses, the fallout from an unplanned pregnancy, an unexpectedly high repair bill thanks to tariffs on the parts that your car or your washer needs coming in from overseas. Just this entire administration is creating a kind of volatility that makes emergencies more likely to happen. So bulking up your emergency fund now so that when these emergencies come, you're a little bit more prepared. I think we tend to suggest for someone who does not have dependents like children, 1 to 3 months is like a small emergency fund and 3 to 6 months is a large emergency fund. For folks who do have dependents, children, elderly parents, things like that, it's closer to 3 to 6 being a small and then 6 to 12 being a large. So if you want to just go ahead and add maybe another 3 to 6 months onto whatever you already have is painful, but probably a good idea.
So let's also talk about how you should be diversifying your possible income streams. When I lost my full-time job at the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't panic. Shut up. Okay, maybe
slightly.
I
just
panicked.
A little, un poquito panic.
Like just a little soupçon of panic.
Salt Bay of panic.
Yeah, exactly. But more importantly, I also didn't miss a day of generating income thanks to my side hustles. So no one should have to have multiple jobs to survive. Let's be clear about that. But there is no denying that having multiple options to earn extra income is a great way to protect yourself against sudden catastrophic job loss. That way, if you get laid off or fired without severance, you'll not only have money coming in already, but you'll be able to turn immediately to growing your other income options now that you have the time. It's the fastest way to recover from a job loss. When economic systems experience the kind of upheaval we're looking at for Project 2025, it affects all kinds of industries, and that means it could affect potentially yours. So find a backup income or a side hustle before the worst should happen. I don't want to be a babysitter again, or a dog walker or rent out my guest room, but they are all on my list of things I can do to make more money quickly, easily, if the need arose. So knowing I have layers of plans and backup plans helps quiet my fears for the future.
Diversify your investments. All right. So we don't recommend checking on your investment portfolio too often. There's really no need to look at it on more than like maybe a quarterly basis. Looking at it daily will just freak you out. So don't do it.
It'll drive you mad.
But I'll say this, the stock market has a bad habit of believing everything that Donald Trump says. He and his administration have this habit of throwing out a wild idea and it causes stocks to fluctuate up and down. And then later on, they'll walk it back. Or my favorite, just like pretend like we never said that. That's a liberal talking point. They made that up. That's fake news. And I'm like, I existed in the past as well. And I know that that's not true. But so this administration really is going to cause more of these like abrupt, hard dips that are going to be especially tough for people who have a good chunk of money set aside. Maybe you're trying to buy your first house, or maybe you're a little older and you're thinking about retiring. So if you're right on the verge of needing to utilize some money that you have invested, you should be especially careful. So the election was only about 2 months ago, and even so, we've experienced more volatility in the stock market on a day-to-day basis. So if you are not diversifying your investments already, this is your sign. You need to not have all of your eggs in one basket. So if you are invested exclusively in US stocks, think about diversifying out to include global stocks. If you have all of your money in the stock market, think about maybe buying property. You need somewhere to live anyway. If you can afford it, that's a pretty good way to just very simply diversify your assets. If you have investments that you need to call upon soon, and I would say soon is like within the next 5 years, think about pulling out more and more of those into bonds or cash or CDs, something safer. You don't want all of the money that you have parked for an important purchase to dip suddenly because Steve Bannon said something. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. And we have a lot more articles talking about ways to diversify your investments, and you can check those out right here.
Especially because the eggs in the basket are very expensive.
They're so expensive.
So expensive.
As 2 chicken owners,
yes,
we are in the 1%.
As 2 mothers of chickens, I feel very secure in investing in my chicken coop. The money's in the nest.
Recession-proof yourself. Let's talk about ways to do that. So the economy is cyclical overall, and we can't totally predict those cycles, but we can make pretty educated guesses. I would say that we had a really nice, what they called a soft landing from a period of hyperinflation. I don't know if that is going to persist, but now is a great time to kind of anticipate a recession could be in the works. And we've written an article before on how to prepare for a recession. I'm going to give you a quick refresher of some of the points that we brought up in that one, because they're all going to be useful to you right now. Make concrete plans. Just in case things go wrong, you want to know, I have options. Track your spending now so that you deeply understand your own needs. Grow your emergency fund. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say it. We are slutty size queens for emergency funds. Pay off your debts just so that you owe more people less money every single month. Increase your credit limit. That gives you an extra layer of emergency preparedness. Get your health in order now. This is a huge one. Just in case you lose your job, you lose access to healthcare, some condition that you have that used to be covered no longer will be. If they fuck around with Obamacare, who the fuck knows what they're going to do? So now is the time to go to your doctor, go to your dentist, get your vaccines, do all of your normal routine stuff. If you have a weird mole, go get the weird mole checked out now. Just don't wait on that stuff. identify ways that you could save money if you needed to, areas that you could cut that will just give you an extra layer of psychological safety that it's not step one, starve to death. Broaden your skills so that you could pivot in your career if you needed to. Back up your work files. This is so that you have access to all of your work contacts, you have portfolio pieces, all that kind of stuff that is helpful in looking for a new job. Go ahead and back that all up now so that you have it. And stay the course with your long-term investments. In general, there is no timing the market. Even if it's fluctuating a lot right now, if it's a long-term investment, you really have to bite the bullet and develop the courage to leave it alone. You do not want to panic sell.
Prepare for higher taxes. You need to set more money aside for taxes in the coming years. I'm sorry, but it's true. Our taxes are going to go up, not down. But Trump said, shut up. Yeah, he said a lot of things. Mostly lies to get people to vote for him.
This is the first time anyone has pointed this out.
Breaking news, Trump lies. The point is, the president's actual power to raise and lower taxes is actually pretty limited. So, and this president in particular, he is really not interested in lowering your taxes. He's interested in lowering their taxes. And when I say them, I mean like all your favorite millionaires, like the Monopoly guy and Mr. Burns and I don't know, Mr. Peanut and Scrooge McDuck. Just we'll use some animation magic to
we'll see how high effort I want to get with this.
Yeah, we'll see if we can put them on the screen. But all those guys.
Yeah, all his besties. They're like Count Chocula and Boo Berry. They all have their own cereals.
Exactly. They all come with like a monocle and a walking stick. Yeah, those people who he wants them to get lower taxes.
I have a personal story about this. So during the final years of the Obama administration, I was getting about $8,000 back from my taxes every spring because I'd withheld more than I needed to, and it was a very nice little windfall to get every year. And the first year after Trump's changes to the tax code went in, I owed $8,000, even though nothing had changed substantially about my own situation. It wasn't that I was suddenly making a lot more money or anything like that. It was just that the new tax code was really designed to punish people who hadn't voted for Trump and who he didn't really care about, which is mainly coastal homeowners, middle-class coastal homeowners. So it sounds so simple, like taxes getting tweaked, that shouldn't really mean, $16,000 out of my pocket. But that is in fact how it might work. So withholding a little bit of extra out of your paychecks is not a bad idea.
Let's talk about applying for student loan forgiveness. So the Biden era student loan forgiveness is likely going to end. He did make a heroic effort to forgive as much student loan debt as he could, despite the efforts of Republicans to block it at every turn. So if you haven't applied yet, do so now. Again, on our website, we will have a link of where to start. And through the magic of video technology, right here, right in front of me, here's the URL where you need to go to apply for student loan forgiveness.
I see it all around me.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you don't do that and you don't get your loans forgiven or at least partially forgiven, you're going to need to come up with a plan to start repaying your student loans. So we have some ideas for that on refinancing and consolidating, what to do if your loans are in forbearance, how to pay them off more quickly, and everything you need to know about the Biden student loan forgiveness plan over on our website, and we'll share those links with you.
Yeah. In particular, I think this should really apply to people who were counting on, forget what the hell the acronym is. Is it PSFL?
PSLF?
PSFLZWQXY.
The one where if you work in public
public
service,
sector,
if you work if you're a teacher or a nonprofit worker or a government worker.
If you were relying on reaching that threshold, what we saw in the previous Trump administration is that people reached that threshold and then said, hey, can I get my loans forgiven? And Betsy DeVos said, nothing. She said nothing. They just ignored those requests. And I think I remember seeing something like fewer than 2% of the eligible loans to be forgiven were actually forgiven under his administration. So please just anticipate that just because a policy exists and you should be protected by it, you cannot count on this administration to actually follow through with the letter of the law. So
public service loan forgiveness. Cool. PSLF. Got it.
I either got it or I was close. So many of those letters were seen in my mind's eye.
We got it.
Okay. Now let's talk about buying things that you actually need before tariffs hit. So I honestly have no idea if Trump is actually going to go through with the unhinged tariffs that he has idly suggested. This is the really hard part about planning for life in this administration. You can't actually trust any of the things that they say, which makes it really hard to plan for the future or feel sane. So there is a very, very frighteningly long list of things that are potentially about to get 20 to 30% more expensive if these tariffs actually come about. Off the top of my head, that includes stuff like gasoline, automobiles, groceries, anything that we import, which is a lot of our fresh fruit and produce, consumer electronics, children's toys, clothes, shoes, furniture, guys, we import a lot of stuff. The scope is so wild that I honestly have trouble imagining that he is actually going to go through with it. I think it's all talk. I think it would turn our economy's soft landing into a total nosedive. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Focus on what you actually need. If you are driving around a 98 Corolla that has been dangling by a thread for a couple of years, yes, now is an excellent time to replace that with a car that is new or at least new to you. But you don't want to go out and panic buy stuff that you don't actually need because their prices might rise in the future. That's sort of the definition of wastefulness and gambling. My partner and I talked for a long time. Every year we've had this talk of is it time for us to get a PS5? We're a Sony household. And our PS4 now kind of sounds like a Soviet era rocket ship taking flight. It's gotten louder and louder, and we're like, is it finally time for us to bite the bullet and get a PS5, which is very expensive? It's around $500 now. Under tariffs, it could be more like $700. So we're like, let's do it. Let's just get one now because we don't want to be stuck paying more in the future. And then we kind of slept on it and realized, no, all of the reasons that we have for wanting to buy it haven't really changed. We still haven't really been convinced that it's something that we need. Maybe our PS4 will shit the bed and we will be stuck paying more money, in which case, oh, well, that's a gamble that we lost. But in the long run, our reasons for wanting to buy something haven't really changed. And so we're not going to go out and start panic buying things. And you guys shouldn't either. The most important thing is getting what you need. And don't worry about panic buying stuff because the prices may go up.
Health and reproductive rights is what we're discussing now. Because the Project 2025 section on reproductive rights is draconian, to say the least. The goal is very clear: to shut down the average person's right to determine when, if, and how many children they have. And it's also to make it much harder to escape abusive marriages. And harder to enter into a marriage if you happen to be queer. And harder to just be queer. We know it's never been about saving the precious babbies. It's about control, and they've shown their hand. We've already discussed how to fight back and how to seek abortion care in a post-Roe world, and you can listen to both of those episodes on our podcast or read about them on our blog. But here are some more precautions that you should take going forward.
Yes, so first, let's talk about securing access to gender-affirming healthcare. More than any other group, Project 2025 is nakedly hostile just to the very existence of trans people. Their plan just written in black and white on paper, is to isolate and terrorize trans people by criminalizing anyone who wants to ally with them in social and medical transitions. So if you require gender affirming healthcare, I am extremely concerned for you and for your ongoing access. Again, I think more than any other group, I'm really, I'm quite scared. This topic is really complex and it's really individualized. So we are considering maybe breaking this out into its own discussion in the future. So if this is a topic you would like us to talk more about, leave us a comment in this video or on the blog post for it, so that we know that there's an appetite for it. How these attacks could impact you is really dependent on your unique situation. Where do you live? Who supports you? Where are you in your medical journey? What are your goals for yourself? So here are just a few things that should broadly apply to everyone. The first is you need to prioritize finding a healthcare professional who you can trust. Talk through your fears with them. They may be able to adjust their approach to give you greater security in case your medications become scarce. For example, they may offer to switch you to oral medications, which are easier to self-administer and more shelf-stable. And in those circumstances, they may be open to making sure that you have a bit of a stockpile just in case. So you need to find someone who you can trust and talk to them openly about your fears. They probably share them all. Second, overseas surgical options will continue to exist. And for many people, that's going to be the cheaper and the better option anyway. So that option isn't going anywhere. And third, I want you to trust that networks will arise in response to any bans. Abortion bans do not stop abortions. Drug bans do not stop drug use. All it does is serve to make it more socially unacceptable and make it more dangerous for people. And I don't want anyone to be driven to take risks with their health or to self-medicate just to get the care that they need. But I want you to trust that queer people and their allies have always rallied together in the face of oppression, and we always will. So do not despair. The exact same kinds of networks that exist for people who need abortions will arise for people who need gender confirming healthcare. This is kind of based on conjecture, but I don't think that hormones will ever be banned. There are just way too many therapeutic uses for hormones, and they are a component in way too many existing medications to be legislated easily. What I'm most concerned about is the legal status of puberty blockers in particular. And those also have many therapeutic applications that have nothing to do with being trans, but they have become emblematic of trans youth and the moral panic around queer children. And regarding this, I spoke with a very wise friend who is trans themselves and works in healthcare. And after a very long, deep sigh, they said, there are many people like myself who would have benefited from transitioning earlier in their lives, but I want young people to know if it happens later, that's okay too. There is so much to balance. It feels like there's a rush, but there's not. Everything can change. So I want you to remember that this is just 4 years, and no matter what they try to do, we will be working alongside you to undo it and to protect you as much as possible.
Well, I could use a palate cleanser.
Well, you won't get one.
So let's talk about how to secure your birth control. So in January 2017, I got my first IUD, and the timing was not coincidental. I don't know if you remember what happened in January 2017, but I remember because I was marching in the streets with my IUD firmly inserted. That's gross and weird. Anyway, if you can get a long-term form of birth control, such as an IUD or vasectomy, get it right now. While access to pills and injections can always be withheld, implants and surgeries are much more secure.
Ain't no undo button on those.
Nope. And even stocking up on condoms isn't a bad idea. So I have always hated it when people say that they don't think others should be able to use abortion as birth control, because it's absurd. No one uses abortion as birth control, but it does control birth. And it's besides the point that I am like waiting for my free sub after getting my punch card at Planned Parenthood filled personally. Abortion controls birth. It is a form of birth control. And you need to build that into your emergency fund. So your emergency fund should contain enough money to cover the cost of an abortion, as well as out-of-state travel and a place to stay if you live in one of the 13 states, 13, that have outlawed or severely limited abortion.
Yep. We have an entire article on this topic called How to Get an Abortion. You can find that really easily. This includes ways for you to discreetly get pills delivered to you in the mail. You're just going to have to do a cost-benefit analysis in terms of how safe you think that action is based on the state in which you live. And if anyone needs birth control pills, send me your address. I will personally mail them to you. I will lick the stamps myself. I want the FBI to have my DNA. Take it, you assholes.
It's adorable. You think they don't already.
Time to delete your period tracking apps.
If you have an app that tracks your period, no, you don't.
Yep. Delete them from your devices, especially if you live in one of the 13 anti-abortion states. Now that we are in the darkest timeline, apps like these could absolutely harvest that data and be used to prosecute people who are seeking abortion care, or even just people who have had a miscarriage. Like, this isn't science fiction. It's already happened. It's already happening right now. This falls under the umbrella of things that I think are a good idea anyway. I understand the allure of a period tracking app, but any app that keeps track of your sensitive personal data, especially about your health, it's just something that you should treat with suspicion. I'm not saying that like identity thieves and hackers are desperate to know when you're ovulating, but keep a paper calendar. Like there are other ways for you to track this information for your own purposes, and do not share that information with anyone because it could be used to hurt you in the future.
Yeah. And I personally haven't had a period in over a decade. So if that option appeals to you, I recommend you hit up our blog where we have instructions on how to menstruate on the cheap and even get rid of your period altogether, healthfully with the approval of a doctor.
You look great for a postmenopausal woman, let me tell you.
Thank you. I try. Next, you need to be careful where you travel. So I recently went on a river rafting trip where we started in northern Colorado on the Green River, and we ended up in the anti-abortion stronghold of Utah. And you best believe I took a pregnancy test before I left on this trip. It is a literal dystopian nightmare that people now need to take their fertility into account before crossing state lines. Yeah, that's exactly what we're recommending here. So you should familiarize yourself with the reproductive health care laws in other states, as well as your own, before you travel so that you can protect yourself accordingly. That means taking a pregnancy test before you cross state lines, not having sex while you're there, and not seeking non-urgent medical care unless you're safely back in a state where abortion is legal. And this is literally because, as many people who can get pregnant know, even routine medical care often requires you to take a pregnancy test before that care will be administered.
Yes.
So you want to avoid anyone finding out if you are pregnant while you're in a state that has abortion outlawed. Project 2025, like I said, the laws are, the plans they have are draconian, and they include being able to restrict the travel of pregnant people. I cannot even.
Yeah. In particular, I want to reiterate, this is not just a thing for people who might want to abort an unwanted pregnancy. This is even for people who would welcome and would like a pregnancy, you do not want to end up in a state that has legislated away your ability to get a necessary abortion when, say, you have an ectopic pregnancy. Again, this is not science fiction. It's happening right now already. Women have already died as a result of these laws. So no fucking in red states. Let me eat my microphone and say that again. No fucking in red states. Lysistrata. Download your favorite porn.
Project 2025 is coming for your porn.
Oh my God. It is so hard to write seriously about this. But I am being honest when I say that extremist religious weirdos behind Project 2025 would love nothing more than to cock block your private nutting by regulating porn out of existence. Guys, they're all about small government. Small enough to fit into each and every one of our browser histories. So to be clear, this really doesn't have a lot to do with like actual pornography. It's more about a bid to control the definition of morality in America and to criminalize the enemies of their definition of morality, which is, you know, like people with progressive ideas about sex and gender, feminists, queer people. And when you hear, won't someone please think of the children? Oh. Just anticipate that that is a pretext for some kind of anti-woman, anti-queer garbage that's going to follow. But they really are making their bid. More and more major porn sites are getting locked behind firewalls. So get you a VPN and make yourself, treat yourself to an old-fashioned spank bank. Oh my God. Guys, it feels so good to give you an action item that is actually fun. You are so welcome. Get your favorite porn, collect it all together into one place and cleave unto it.
Filing for divorce. Right. So that last bit was pretty funny, but spousal abuse, not so funny. There's been an uptick in divorce filings since the 2024 election, and there are actually a handful of reasons for this, but they all kind of boil down to one thing. Wives cannot trust their husbands. We obviously both married these beautiful, progressive, feminist men who are both committed to this fight for equality and equity among genders. And their hearts are as full as their lustrous beards. Others are not so lucky.
Yes. And we're framing this as a heterosexual marriage issue, and overwhelmingly it is. But if the results of this election have left you with the knowledge that you are legally in a partnership with someone who voted against your rights and your humanity in 2024, if they have demonstrated an unwillingness to be an equal partner in your marriage, in your life, and not respect your basic right to self-determination, please consider filing for divorce now before Trump takes office again. Project 2025 is directly targeting no-fault divorce laws. Basically, the way that it used to work in ye olden times is that if you wanted a divorce, you had to prove you had a good reason. And those reasons might be that you caught him in bed with another woman, like direct proof of infidelity, or you had to come in with a black eye and say, see, this is what he does to me. By targeting these no-fault divorce laws, they're trying to make it so that women don't have the ability to leave partners unless the state agrees that he fucked up badly enough to warrant it. That's a very scary situation because as anyone who has had the misfortune of being in an abusive relationship knows, it is very, very difficult to advocate for yourself, to collect evidence. It's very easy for things to be destroyed, for information to be manipulated, and for your personhood to be so stressed and so monitored that you're not able to meet those thresholds of evidence. So it's a really terrifying situation. If you are at all on the fence about remaining with a partner who is fundamentally not supportive of you, there's no convenient time to get a divorce, but now is the most convenient time. It's only going to get harder from here out, and we don't want you to be trapped in this situation. Let's talk about immigration. It is about to become a pretty dangerous time to be an immigrant in America. The Trump campaign was fueled by a lot of hatred for immigrants and refugees, and a lot of that hatred is captured in the white nationalist messaging of Project 2025, and they would love to see their irrational hatred codified into law, no matter how damaging it is to the people of this mediocre country.
Yeah. So first, consider seeking dual citizenship. If you are a U.S. citizen and you are eligible for dual citizenship with another country, you should consider applying. The benefits include enhanced global mobility with your second passport and an increase in security and stability with another place to turn to if you are unable to return to your home country, protecting your safety and well-being. In general, there are 4 paths to dual citizenship: birth, marriage, investment, and descent. Now, I'm intimately aware with this 4th path to dual citizenship because, drumroll please, drumroll please. Thank you. My application for dual citizenship is already pending.
Brag.
Yeah, no, I'm not sorry. So my grandmother was an Italian immigrant, and she did not become a naturalized citizen of the United States until my dad was about 6 years old. This means, under Italian law, I am eligible for dual citizenship with the U.S. and Italy. And all I needed were some documents, my grandmother's birth certificate, my dad's birth certificate, and my grandmother's naturalization papers. And a big fat check, because depending on the country you're applying for dual citizenship with, sometimes it's just not cheap. So definitely take that into consideration. Anyway, both my grandmother and my dad voted for Trump. And while I'm not rooting for my 92-year-old Nona to be deported, it would be the most grimly hilarious outcome of this whole fucking situation.
I have a dual citizenship path myself.
Oh, yeah?
Which is to finally legally wed you.
There you go.
And then we can live in the northern Italian countryside.
Yes,
stomping grapes.
We can have our
and
villa
eating
on
burrata.
Lago di Como or Lago Maggiore and just enjoy the little red tile roofs and... Anyway.
That's the plan.
That's the plan, yeah. Also under immigration, you should be able to prove your immigration status. So make no mistakes, naturalized citizens are absolutely on the chopping block according to Project 2025. Stephen Miller, who is Trump's immigration guy, is A, a vampire, and B, rapidly anti-immigrant. So it would be his absolute wet dream if birthright citizenship went away completely and was replaced with a system in which only the children of 2 citizen parents had a right to citizenship, which would actually mean that my disabled veteran of a Trump voting father would also be deported. Oh my God! The leopards, they're eating faces. Yeah, anyway. No matter the status of your citizenship, you need to be able to prove said status. This is because there have already been horror stories of legal immigrants and American citizens being detained or deported by racist immigration officials. So you need to make copies of your documents and put them in multiple places: your home, your vehicle, your work, and your wallet. This is going to sound like I'm fear-mongering, but ICE can come for you at any time, and they don't exactly give you a chance to go back to your home and pack, let alone notify your loved ones.
If your plan is to say, but I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm allowed to be here, assume that that will not be listened to, unfortunately. All right. Seeking refuge and legal assistance. So a lot of cities and states have already indicated they will not cooperate with ICE, and they will not stand for the federal government's efforts to track down undocumented immigrants. If you have the means, consider relocating to one of these places. If you're in one of these most vulnerable groups, it is really not a bad idea to relocate. Similar to what we were talking about with abortion and trans healthcare, networks exist to meet the needs of these people who are being targeted and oppressed under these proposed new rules. There are so many nonprofits and legal organizations and community-driven groups whose goal is to support the needs of local immigrants and refugees, no matter their legal status. So if you are an immigrant, keep a list of contacts in your phone just in case you get pulled over or targeted somehow and you need help. Assume that you will get no warning on this. They know that this is going to be very unpopular. The National Immigration Law Center has a guide for detainees and their families, and that is a really good place to start looking. We will obviously have links for all of that.
Going green. So Project 2025 is actively hostile to climate change mitigating policies and really anything to do with green energy. These are Captain Planet villains, and they want to sell off and develop literally the national parks, for fuck's sake. So they won't even bat an eye at destroying environmental programs that threaten their oil baron buddies. If you care about living on a planet fit for human habitation, and who could blame you, you're going to have to fight for it, and quickly.
Yes. So first step, apply for any green federal programs right now. Assume that federal assistance programs for green energy upgrades and purchases are very likely to end. So this includes stuff like tax rebates, discounted interest rates, low monthly payment plans that are all subsidized by the federal government. So if you've been considering a major green purchase, like converting your home's heating system to something more efficient, or installing solar panels on your roof, or buying a hybrid or electric vehicle, go ahead and pull the trigger on those things now if you can, because it's very likely that those subsidies are going to end and then they're going to get a lot more expensive. I know I personally, I live in a 100-plus-year-old house. It was heated with a huge oil tank that had to be refilled twice a year. And my state and federal programs made it so that I could get a loan that was completely interest-free to change over to a newer heating system. And I would anticipate that that incredible offer is not going to be available anymore. So anything like that, go ahead and pull the trigger on it now.
Likewise, we got solar panels on our house this year, and we're looking at a big fat tax rebate. So glad we got that done.
Hurry.
Yay.
Hurry now while supplies last.
While supplies last. While tax rebates last.
While the planet is not on
While
fire.
the planet lasts.
No, too dark. We're going dark.
Speaking of which, you should consider climate activism very carefully. So we rarely talk about the privilege required for activism. Often we find it is the most vulnerable among us, those most threatened by racism, xenophobia, misogyny, environmental exploitation, and corporate greed, who are on the front lines demonstrating for life-saving change and world-changing change. So, for example, I'm thinking about the water protectors who demonstrated against the Dakota Access Pipeline a couple years ago. Though this was a group of mostly Native American people, and they were struggling valiantly, mostly in obscurity, until the global media took notice, mostly because celebrities like Shailene Woodley were arrested for joining them on the front lines. So this is a prime example of how an individual can use their privilege for activist causes. Historically, you might know this, our country doesn't give a shit about the indigenous population. But conversely, we worship celebrities like gods. So keep the power of your own privilege in mind when considering how you can help mitigate the climate crisis under the shadow of Project 2025. And to be fair, I am not saying that everyone who is white, cis, straight, and financially stable and progressive should run out and chain herself to a sequoia or a sandstone arch or something.
I do. I'm saying that.
I'm going next week. But if you do have the privilege to fight for our environment safely, it's something you should consider. And otherwise, you will be totally fine just buying an annual national parks pass and staying safe. Protect yourself. Raise your hand if you feel physically and emotionally unsafe right now. First step, cut off the haters. So, personal story time. My parents have now voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and something about this most recent time just kind of broke me. So, it's clear that the values and morals they raised me with just aren't applying anymore. I feel deeply hurt and betrayed by their decision to throw me and countless other vulnerable people under the political bus. I don't feel like I can trust them with my physical and emotional safety. I don't feel like I can trust them with my innermost thoughts and feelings on the world and our society. And it really fucking breaks my heart because despite the hateful conservative rhetoric they bombard me with, I still love my parents. I know I'm not alone. Familial estrangement is also on the rise since after the 2024 presidential election. So while I'm still working through my own feelings about cutting contact, I'm still processing my decisions and my needs. I know exactly what I need to tell you right now because it's what Lauren told me. That's you, yes. Okay, here goes. It is okay to cut people off, even if they're family, even if you still love them. You need to consider your own emotional well-being. You need to weigh the toll of educating and influencing and trying desperately to cling to relationships with people who are, at best, in denial about the humanitarian disaster that will be Project 2025 and, at worst, reveling in the inhumane cruelty. Ask yourself, if we were in Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union or fucking North Korea, would this person report me or someone I care about to the authorities just for being my own authentic self? And if the answer is yes, I want you to feel absolutely no remorse about quietly removing them from your life. I promise you it'll be okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just genuinely it's so hard to hear you talk about. I know I have another segment to move on to, but it's so hard to hear you talk about that and to not just want to listen and absorb and focus in on it because I think one of the most unmooring things about this era that we are living in is this terrifying sense that I have woken up next to someone and realized I don't know who you are, whether that person is a romantic partner or the parents who raised you or the sibling you've lived alongside your whole life, or just knowing that every citizen that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, the lady who's so nice checking you out at the store, it's like, were you a part of this? Did you do this? Are you someone I can trust? Are you someone I should scorn? It's very sad. And it's very complicated. And,
it's very complicated. And everyone should give themselves space to examine the emotional toll. I've been very depressed recently, which is not a word I use lightly. And I'm not generally a depressed person. I'm a realist, but I'm also an optimist. And the last couple months of the election, I've just been out of sorts. I used to talk to my mom about nearly everything. And I've noticed that over the years since 2016, it's just become less and less that I feel I can share with her.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to come at me with, oh, it's too extreme to cut people off. And how could you let politics get in the way of family? But it's more complicated than that. And I think
this is not about politics. This is about ethics. This is about values.
Yeah. And at best, it's about the fact that it almost feels like my family has been brainwashed into a cult.
Yeah. And that is a framework that's been very helpful for me to think about.
But I'm a cisgendered woman. I'm going to be mostly fine. I have the resources to be mostly fine. I know people who are not going to be fine. I have undocumented friends. I have transgender friends. I have Black friends. I have people who I care deeply about who are literally afraid for their lives. And I'm getting criticized for cutting off my family because it's just politics.
I think everyone, when they vote, is making a declaration about what is important to them, about what matters to them. And part of making that declaration, especially when you choose to make what you did public and known within your friends and family circles, you have to stand behind that and be prepared to pay a social cost. And I was struck by, after this most recent election, I heard a lot of conservatives were, for the first time, truly feeling very shocked that individual people within their most treasured inner circles were furious with them and were upset with them and refused to talk with them, or didn't want to come home for Thanksgiving or Christmas anymore. And they were really like blown away by like, what? But it's just politics. And sometimes I do think that forcing people to understand that this is the price that you have to pay for the decisions that you made, that's not on you to be just forgiving all the time of any indiscretion, no matter the scope. It's about holding people accountable for their actions. And these are the actions that people have taken, and you need to respond in a way that reflects your own values and what matters to you.
Yeah. And it's also a part of self-care.
Yeah.
Like I am tired of telling my dad, we're not talking politics, we're not talking social issues, and like leaving the room when he ignores my clear boundaries. I'm just tired of it. So like the boundary is, well, we just won't talk at all. If you can't respect me as a person, if you can't respect the humanity of so many vulnerable people. Anyway.
Yeah. It's hard. This is really hard.
Cool. So on that note,
he's leaving. He returned.
Nope. This is a good palate cleanser. We needed this.
On this note, the opposite is true as well. It's time for you to gather your allies around you. Everyone deserves a community who they know that they can trust and rely on. And everyone deserves a community that they can go to for help when they need it. We have readers who are very young, very vulnerable, and we have readers who are a little more established. We even have a lot of wealthy readers who are in a really good position to help others. So to both of those groups, I say, you guys should be finding each other and in intimate communication with each other about, here's what I need and here's what I can offer. You should be loud and make your views clear so that people who need help know this is someone I can trust. It's very hard sometimes to ask for help. And the biggest, scariest barrier can be just knowing whether or not this is someone who I can trust. So be loud and proud. And there are so many community aid organizations. A lot of them are fairly underground, that make it possible to travel for an abortion, that make it possible to go off the grid temporarily to escape an abusive family member or spouse. There are so many of these groups, and almost like we kind of don't want to publicize them, but they exist, and you can join them. You can create them. You deserve to be surrounded by people who stand ready to not just support you, but fight for it and sacrifice for your safety. Let's talk about building an escape plan. So I would say that in my mind, reaching Project 2025, the most vulnerable groups in my mind are immigrants and refugees, trans people, pregnant people, and I would even say maybe government workers.
Absolutely.
In that. So if you are in one of those groups, we're not trying to be alarmist, but I do think you need to have an escape plan. If you live in an unfriendly state, I want you to talk to a friend who lives in a friendlier state and say, if the worst ever happened, can I have your guest room? And trust that they will say yes, because I will. If you are in a red state, plan to move to a blue state. If you are in an unfriendly area, find your closest sanctuary city. Even contemplating going to another country. For this most vulnerable group, I do think you should have a go bag. You should have extra travel funds set aside. You should have your important documents, copies of them on hand. And if you are not in that most vulnerable group, reach out to the people in your circle who are and say, I proactively tell them I would like to be a part of any emergency plans that you might have, because this shit is scary and we need to stick together.
Next, learn about firearms. So I've actually been kind of surprised at the sharp turn of gun discourse surrounding Project 2025, specifically just how many liberal progressives are suddenly buying guns. So I'm going to talk about this because my husband and I are actually gun owners, and we live in Colorado, so I promise it's like really normal here. But we've had two different people in other states, California and Massachusetts, ask us what kind of gun they should buy and how, which I get.
The biggest you can find.
Yeah, the biggest one. The biggest
Order
one.
in bulk for the biggest discount.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so gun rights in the United States has always been like wildly partisan. This is because of the NRA. They picked a side to lobby, and that side just happens to be the one now pushing Project 2025. But this means that gun ownership has just really been a marker of conservatism, just like being anti-choice, being anti-LGBT, being anti-immigrant, all of that awful stuff. So it's very understandable that if the people who disagree with your very right to exist are armed to the teeth, it can be very understandable for you to arm yourself right back. So with that in mind, here is some advice from a liberal progressive gun owner. Please don't go out and buy a gun right away. If you are even considering gun ownership, I think that the first thing you should do is take a class. So you should Google firearms training courses, gun safety classes, or concealed carry permit classes, plus your area, and you'll find what you're looking for, I promise. I've taken a concealed carry permit class. It was really, really helpful just in teaching me like what guns even are and how they work. And I feel very strongly that in a country where guns literally outnumber people, that every adult should know how to unload a gun and make sure it's unloaded just for safety purposes. So these classes, they will be very helpful to educating you and like getting you to understand what you're really getting into. In addition, I also think that you should familiarize yourself with the statistics on gun deaths in the homes of gun owners. This is because like gun deaths spike when somebody who's dealing with suicidal ideation, for example, owns a gun, or gun deaths of children spike if that child lives in a home with a gun. Gun deaths of domestically abused people spike if that person and their abuser live in a home with a gun. So you should just know this stuff and weigh that in your decision to purchase a gun. And also I think you make sure you have a way of locking up that gun safely. Even if it's a trigger lock, if it's a safe, it should be able to be locked up so someone can't just come upon it and use it. Anyway, if after you've educated yourself on firearms, you still think that gun ownership is a reasonable choice for you personally, I recommend shopping at Cabela's. It's really fun. It's one of those like Bass Pro type stores that has like a bunch of taxidermied animals on the wall and like a giant tank of fish. It's really fun to walk around and just people watch. But yeah, I recommend shopping at Cabela's. The NRA will in fact pay your sales tax whether you want it to or not.
Wow, what a great value. Jess, that's really good advice. I completely agree. People should not go out and panic buy guns. Instead, what I would suggest is just buy the ammo and then just go out in a field and with your catcher's mitt, just practice throwing the ammunition as hard as possible.
One bullet at a time. Yeah.
I think that is all the average person needs for home safety. The final note I want to leave us with is to remember that this is just 4 years. Seasons change. Political movements, they ebb and swell. Sort of celebrities and politicians, they have their moment in the sun, and then we turn on them. Look at The Rock. We used to love The Rock. Now we fucking hate The Rock.
We canceled The Rock. I never thought I'd see the day.
Guys, things can just change. And sometimes the pain of going through experiences like this is what gives people the experiences that they need to understand why we shouldn't be making the choices that we've made. And it is so painful, and I wish that we didn't have to go through it this way. But our message is, do not despair. Let these hateful, patriarchal, white supremacist, Christian nationalist, homophobic, misogynist assholes dash themselves upon the rocks of our resistance, and trust that no matter how vile and awful the things that they want to do, they have to actually do them. And I think they are going to trip over themselves. I think they are going to shoot themselves in the foot. I think they are going to devolve into petty infighting. And I do believe that they will make themselves a shameful shit stain upon the underpants of human history. And this time will pass, and their ideas will not win out in the long run. Ours are the ones that will endure, because they are the ones that honor and recognize the essential aspects of a shared human experience. So fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them.
Only 4 years.
And insert music video for Turn, Turn, Turn by the Yardbirds here.
I would also say seasons change. The live performance on Dave Letterman. Watch that when you're bummed out. That'll change your life.
All right, darling citizens of Bitch Nation, we are but two humble and imperfect bitches doing our best out here in these streets. Our advice is by no means complete, but it is a good place to start. So in the spirit of collaborative action, what do you recommend? What are you doing to protect yourself and your community from Project 2025? We want to know all about it, so share in the comments below the video if you're watching this, below the article if you're reading this. And if you want us to keep doing pieces like this, consider joining our Patreon or making a one-time donation through PayPal. All labor deserves compensation, even labors of love, which is why we really have to thank our Patreon donors and not Ground News for funding this this production. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/bitchesgetriches. And if you like our work and you want to see more of it, you can listen to the podcast, read the articles, watch the YouTube channel, all at bitchesgetriches.com. Follow us on all the social medias. We're on the okay ones. We're not on the Dead Bird site. We're not on that one, but you should follow us on other ones. And yeah, we love you, and we're going to get through this together.
Yeah, we are.
Bitches out.
Bitches out.